Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Appraisal Buzzcast. We have a great episode for you today. The Appraisal Buzzcast is brought to you by Appraiser Learning, and I'm going to welcome in our host, Hal Humphreys from Appraiser Learning. Hal, how are you doing?
Jim, I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm so excited to be here. We have one of our most popular guests, Josh Walitt. He was the first ever episode of the Appraisal Buzzcast back before we were on video. But he's done so many episodes with us. He's always so popular with our listeners. Josh, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Josh, I didn't realize you were the first guest we had on the Buzzcast. That's awesome.
First ever made history with you. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, Josh, for our guests, I've got you labeled there as Josh Walitt with NAA. Tell us a little bit about what the NAA is.
Yeah. Well, the NAA is the National Association of Appraisers. So we're a national association made up of, as you might guess, appraisers, but not just individual appraisers, actually. So it's a unique organization. It pulls together associations and coalitions from states, and we're actually sort of experiencing some exponential growth in terms of the coalitions and associations joining and becoming part of it. And that's really one of the big focuses of the NAA. As a matter of fact, you talk to board members of the NAA, you talk to me, you talk to other members who've been members for a long time, and say, oh, what advice do you give to appraisers? And the first bit of advice is join your state association or coalition. And then appraisers also join NAA as individual members. And then they're also, even if they don't take that step initially, they are members by virtue of being in a state organization that is a member. And so we have a board of governors, and they share best practices. How can they make legislative change in their states? Right? Is it a statute that needs to change? Is it a regulation? So we work on that organizational level with coalitions and associations, and then we work on the individual appraiser level, bringing them information, having an appraiser relief fund for disasters, taking a look at what type of education is necessary. NAA itself isn't an education provider, but partnering with education providers, holding conferences that bring, what should we say, top of mind issues, right? All of the moving parts, trying to really bring it from an appraiser perspective and bringing in the other parties, clients and client related parties, so we understand perspectives of what is needed from us and then what can we offer, things like that. So
I think that's a great description of the NAA, and I do not have my designation up on the screen, but I am a member of the National Association. And for those of you that don't know, Josh is the incoming president of the NAA, which is why I wanted him to be here today to talk about the upcoming ACTS conference. That's the Appraisers Conference and Trade Show, April 1st in Sacramento, California. So we're really excited about that. Before we get into talking about the conference, I want to hear one quick word from one of our sponsors.
Since 1978, LIA Administrators and Insurance Services has been offering E&O insurance to valuation professionals. LIA applies superior customer service, exceptional liability education from Peter Christensen, and unparalleled claim defense managed by Claudia Gaglioni. LIA offers errors and omissions, commercial bonds, general liability, cyber liability, and real estate agents and brokers E&O. Visit liability.com or call 800-334-0652.
Welcome back, everybody. I've got Josh Walitt here, incoming president of the National Association of Appraisers, and we're going to be talking today about the upcoming ACTS conference. That's in Sacramento, California. 1st of April. Josh, tell me a little bit about the conference, what appraisers can expect, and why should appraisers come to a conference?
Well, first off, the ACTS conference, this is the Appraisers Conference and Trade Show. Sometimes people wonder what that stands for, and why should appraisers come to conferences, including the ACTS conference? Well, sometimes we get stuck behind our desk and we don't necessarily collaborate with other professionals. We're not necessarily in communication with a lot of other folks, and you you don't necessarily get the same experience over the phone or through Zoom or something like this, right? So actually going to a conference and networking, being able to talk with perhaps some clients, talking with software providers, talking with colleagues who are experiencing maybe some of the same things, but maybe some other different things, and have different experiences to share, and maybe they have other solutions than you've thought of. So that networking is really invaluable. And there's oftentimes the conference. So when you look at the agenda, you'll see the conference, but you'll also see pre-conference activities like CE classes. We have the board of directors meeting that anybody can attend. Uh, and there's usually some other sort of fun activities, right? So it's not all business. Usually there's some after hours type events and things like that. So there's really a lot of variety, and I think sometimes people think, "Oh, conference, you're sitting in this in the seat the entire time." There's really a lot more. As a matter of fact, it's the meetings and the networking that are often of great value to professionals.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Appraiser Learning has partnered with the NAA for the past several years. Actually, we founded the ACTS conference with the NAA. And the thing I like about this conference is we are not constrained to one location every year. We move it at different parts of the country across the year. And here's the thing. Yes, you can get continuing education. Yes, you can sit in the conference and hear from heavy hitters in the appraisal industry. But for me, a lot of times, it's the local flavor night where you get to go hang out at a local spot and spend time with your appraiser buddies and build those relationships. That's where it really the rubber hits the road for me is making those connections with real appraisers from across the country. And then when you're in the conference itself, when you're in the exhibit hall, I've seen so many appraisers stop by a booth and talk with a vendor and say, I didn't realize you did X, Y, or Z, or I didn't realize you were such an appraiser-friendly AMC, or appraiser-friendly lender. So it's a really good chance to go meet with potential clients, meet with fellow appraisers, bounce some ideas off of people, learn, get the CE credit and all that stuff. So I can't say enough about how much fun I think the ACTS conference is.
Yeah, and I like that you hit on the fact that the ACTS conference moves around. Some of the other conferences tend to be in some of the same locations, which is wonderful, right? So, having something regular is wonderful, but going back to that idea of an organization of organization, an association of associations, right? That we partner with a state association or coalition to host this, and so this time it's California's association. So, yeah, we're able to really take a look at the local leadership, and really, get to know a lot of different people and understand, sort of what they're going through, what they're experiencing. We get to oftentimes meet some of the regulators. Those regulators from that state will come to the conference. Maybe they present. In this case, we actually do have the bureau chief who will join me in welcoming people to the conference, and we do have other representatives there from the regulatory bureau. So just an interesting mix of people, and you get outside of that sort of immediate realm that you have in your one office, right?
Yeah, and the other good thing about traveling around the country is I know that a lot of appraisers don't want to go to Las Vegas. They don't want to travel that far. When we come to, let's say, Salt Lake City, we get a lot of Utah appraisers that come to a conference that have never been to a conference before. When we go to South Carolina, same thing. So those of you in California, we're in your backyard. Come join us. I'm going to take a real quick break to hear from another one of our sponsors, and then Josh and I will come back and finish up our chat about the ACTS conference.
The Appraisal Institute recently launched its Instagram page, AI's latest presence on social media, joining Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and the Face Value podcast. Visit and follow AI's Instagram page for another way to access valuation news and association updates. www.instagram.com/Appraisal Institute.
Welcome back. I'm Hal Humphreys. This is Appraisal Buzz. I'm joined today by Josh Walitt, incoming president of the National Association of Appraisers. Josh, we talked about kind of the fun things and the networking opportunities. What are some things that the ACTS conference does that might be useful for appraisers today?
Well, there's a lot of moving parts that are happening, right? There's modernization. I think modernization is a very, very broad word, and we tend to throw that around. But we're seeing hybrids and desktops and data collection, and we're seeing modernization in other ways, right? Through technology and different types of support and analysis we can go through, and we're seeing changes at different state regulators, federal regulators, taking a look at how they monitor the state regulators, things like so much that we don't necessarily think of in our normal day-to-day practice. And we have pre-conference CE. We're talking about bias. We're talking about the ethics rule changes. We're talking about some of those hot button items that can be sometimes uncomfortable to talk about, but when we see the public legislators are concerned, we need to address them. We need to really take a look at what's going on. How do the regulators, the legislators, the public in general understand what we do? Are there any misunderstandings there? And then what are the expectations for appraisers, right? And so we can take a look and see, well, am I needing to fine tune what I'm doing? Are there things I should watch out for? Are there better ways of communicating? Maybe I'm following my methods just wonderfully, but are there better ways of communicating it in my reports? So there's a lot of moving parts. Rather than putting our head in the sand, rather than putting up a firewall and building a wall between us and them type of atmosphere, we look at what are solutions? Where can we work alongside all of these participants to come to good solutions?
Yeah, and to that end, everybody that's watching this video and listening to the podcast is fully aware that there's a lot of conversation out there about bias in appraisals and a lack of diversity in the industry. On one of the pre-conference things we're doing is we have the Appraiser Diversity Initiative that we're hosting, and that's hosted by the Appraisal Institute and Fannie Mae. Tell us a little bit about the ADI. What is that?
The ADI, the Appraiser Diversity Initiative, we're having a workshop there. So this is Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, other organizations. There's many other sponsors. NAA is a sponsor of the ADI, and this is to bring more diversity into the appraiser profession. If I was having a conversation a few weeks ago, and it came around to diversity, right? And really what we came around to was, if we really believe that people of all, religions and colors and backgrounds should be part of, obtaining, attaining leadership in appraisal firms and, being a leader in the profession in other ways and leading state coalition, if we really believe we want diversity all the way through the profession, then we need to make sure that everybody can get in. And it's very easy to say, well, anybody can. There's no skin color requirement, right? There's no religious requirement. There's no this or that requirement. But when we take a look at how it actually plays out, many of us say, well, I came in through family, or I came in through a close friend. And so when we really take a look at how our profession has brought in people in the past, it's not a surprise that we tend to be white and male, although we do have females as well, but we're not incredibly diverse. And so taking a look and making intentional steps to diversify the profession is necessary. We are one of the, or possibly the least diversified profession. It doesn't mean that we're intentionally excluding people, but what it means is, are there steps that we can take to intentionally diversify and get a richer population in our profession? That's really what the Appraiser Diversity Initiative is all about. There's people look at scholarships for the education. There's help in placing them at appraisal firms. And we also have supervisor and trainee events right here in pre-conference. And it has been a hit. We are seeing larger and larger trainees and supervisors attend, matching people up, finding best practices for finding a supervisor. So there's really a lot going on in that respect.
Yeah, and you know, the NAA is working on a trainee development program. They're also working on a mentor development program to provide information to trainees and mentors on how to work together. Um, and you know, Sierra Dingman is doing, or Sierra Alden is doing the trainee event pre-conference, and she has put so much effort and so much time into it, and it's a really fantastic thing for people who are trainees to come to a conference and meet actual appraisers that might end up being your mentor. So I think that's fantastic. A couple other things real quick before we go and bring Jim back in. You know, on Sunday we have Peter Christensen offering his bias training course. I think it's a 4-hour course. If you have any interest in bias education, I can tell you without hesitation, Peter Christensen is one of the smartest, most thoughtful, most well-respected speakers on the topic right now. He does it in a way that helps you understand all of the issues, and not only understand them, but how to interrogate yourself and interrogate your processes to avoid biases. And then on Tuesday, the second day of the conference, we have, as Josh mentioned, we've got you know, the ethics rule and bias being discussed in one of the conference sessions, and we've also got another discussion in the larger conference about diversity in the industry. So look, the NAA has been out front on this issue for the past several conferences. We have hosted discussions, panels, education about these issues. If you look, we're all going to have to deal with these things. Every appraiser in the country is going to have to get some form of bias education. Start now. Start learning. Let's get Jim Morrison back in the room real quick. Jim, I think we've covered all of the topics we talked about covering.
Well, there's one more. If anybody really enjoyed what we talked about and wants to check it out, go to appraisersconference.net and register there and check it out, because you're going to want to be there for this conference.
Yeah, and I will share on our social media and throughout all the other things a link to come sign up and participate in the ACTS conference. Regardless of where you are in the country, we would love to see you there. I know for a fact when I'm at a conference and appraisers come up and introduce themselves to me and say, "Oh my gosh, I saw your videos on whatever," it's thrilling for me. I love that. And I know Josh feels the same way. He loves to meet appraisers from around the country. So come up, say hi. Jim, did we have an anonymous appraiser question for this week?
So for those of you that are listening, the anonymous appraisers are just questions anybody can ask, and we'll get our panel of geniuses to respond to them and tell you what they think.
I don't know where those geniuses are, but
yeah, that's a strong term. We gotta go to the Apple Genius Bar to find that.
All right. Well, this one says, with the announcement from Fannie Mae on the 1st, I wanted to know if I can trust. Sorry, I wanted to know how we can trust these mobile inspection apps, and what do I need to do before accepting these kind of orders?
Well, I'll hit that first real quick. I have used a number of the mobile inspection apps, and I think what appraisers the concern I see voiced most often is, you know, I go out and I measure and I know that I'm right. I've tested some of these things on a number of occasions, and here's the thing: they're as accurate, if not more accurate, than my personal measurements. I'm just not that good. My suggestion would be pick a mobile app for mobile inspection work, for mobile property observation work. Test it out, see how it works. Use it 10 times and compare it to your actual measurements. And if you can't get comfortable with it, that's a personal decision. But I'm going to suggest if you try it 10 times, do an actual physical measurement, and double check those numbers, you're going to find that it is incredibly accurate. Josh, you have any thoughts on the mobile inspection tools?
Yeah, there are a lot of options out there, and when I was first faced with this and first started looking at this with actually a few clients that I consult for, I thought of it in the sense of when we were faced with laser measurers. And some people were very much on board. They just jumped and said, "Oh, I'll do it." And others, and I was sort of among this other group where I said, I don't think that's going to work. I mean, I know the physical tape, I can see what's happening, right? And so what did I do? I tested it, just like you're suggesting, Hal, right? I tested it. And I think a lot of people did. They didn't necessarily buy it. They said, "Hey, let me borrow your laser." And we saw it was just as accurate or perhaps more accurate, depending on how tight we had stretched our tape and things. It was right in line with what we were doing. And so you can do the same with these types of virtual inspection apps. And there's a lot of moving parts around it. So we've seen recent announcements related to hybrid appraisals where someone else is using that type of data collection app and scanning app that then measures and comes up with calculations, and that is then provided to the appraiser to rely on. But there are also these other moving parts where the appraiser can sit at their desk and use an app like Remote Val and do a live completion inspection or a live repair inspection. Say, "Okay, thank you, homeowner. I need to see it from that other angle. The lender has said we can do it remotely here, but I do need to see, all those angles. I need to feel comfortable that that's actually repaired there. Or, let's go to the next room. That was also missing the flooring. So let's take a look in the entire room." So there's actually a few applications for this type of inspection app. So you have that hybrid situation with another person. You have the live inspection for finals and for completions and for other scenarios as well. And appraisers are also using it live on their interior and exterior inspections themselves. They're saying, "Look, I'm not going to use the laser anymore. I'm not going to pull the tape anymore. I'm just going to use the scanning app that I have available to me." So they can use, for example, Remote Val on a case-by-case basis. They just use it as they see fit and get the sketch and floor plan back. So I would just leave everybody with, technology always moves. Technology always moves. Test it out. You're going to use a certain combination of technology that you feel comfortable with. We're talking about inspection. That's one piece, right? What about all the other technology for analysis and all these things? So you test out, feel what works for you, and then proceed so you can be efficient, you can be as accurate as necessary, and so on.
I love it, Jim. That's a fantastic question from the crowd. I am enjoying these anonymous appraiser questions. I think it's fun to get actual questions from the crowd. Josh, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Here's the thing, folks. The ACTS conference is in less than a month, April 1st in Sacramento, California. Please join us out there. We'll provide all of the details for signing up, for going and checking out the conference on the website, in the comments below the video, in the podcast comments, those kind of things. Jim, anything else we need to cover?
I just want to thank our listeners for joining us and our sponsors for helping us put this on.
Great. Josh, thank you. Always good to see you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I'm Hal Humphreys, and that is your Appraisal Buzzcast.